I was first introduced to Pollock's work, Autumn Rhythm, as a child. I was given a book called Olivia by my grandmother. There were a series of books written about a young piglet called Olivia, and one in particular stood out to me. Olivia went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and stood in a state of confusion in front of Pollock's work. And to me, in the book, it summarizes perfectly the way I would think most people would respond to his work. It says, "There was just one painting Olivia didn't quite get. I could do that in about 5 minutes." So she did. And as a child, I completely agreed with her. And even my sister created a series of ceramic plates inspired by Pollock. Well, I say inspired, she was a 6-year-old child. It was more like copied, not quite to the same standard. But this idea of the simplistic nature of Pollock and how, in my eyes, he created a piece that seems so easy to make was intriguing to me. I remember thinking, well, if he's famous for this, I could be famous too. However, as I grew up, I discovered, for me, a rewarding element to Pollock's work. Being someone who has an interest in engineering and being able to put a meaning or structure behind something, this element of Pollock's work excited me. Pollock managed to interpret the wildness of the natural world around us. However, no one could define exactly what it was that made Pollock's work so appealing. This being said, an artist and physicist called Richard Taylor attempted to create a machine that could mimic Pollock's work. His machine was called the Pollockizer, and it was designed as a basic kick pendulum. However, there was a device at the top of the pendulum that essentially knocked the string, creating a very different type of motion called chaotic motion. And this chaotic motion was what was meant to represent Pollock's hand as he was painting. By copying his technique, the Pollockizer was able to mimic one particular aspect of Pollock's work. This aspect was that Pollock's work appeared more or less the same, however closely you looked at it. You're able to see this pattern emerging with very different size scales, which look the same, and this property is known as fractals. Because of this, as long as you can't see the edge of the canvas, you have no idea if you're standing 30 feet away or 2 feet away. They will both have the exact same level of complexity. And for me, this is an incredible idea. The component of fractals actually mirrors the reality of the world around us, and that deep in Pollock's painting, there is a mathematical structure and an underlying code. So there's the contrast between what you see hanging in a gallery, a seemingly uncontrolled, messy piece of art, and the reality of the mathematical structure with some sort of underlying code. Now, these codes, or fractals, are seen everywhere. In fern leaves, in leaves on a tree, in a falling snowflake, or even in the branches of a strike of lightning. They are naturally structured patterns that help build the world we live in, and Pollock somehow managed to capture this in his art. But the baffling part of this all is that fractals weren't actually discovered until 1980. But Pollock died in a car crash in 1956. So Pollock was working with and capturing the factors or characteristics of something that wasn't even defined yet. Pollock loved the freedom of his art and being able to get lost in his paintings. His painting doesn't come from an easel. He works from the floor and walks around it, adding to it from every angle. This way of working meant that there wasn't necessarily a top or a bottom or sides. Because of this, it confuses me as to why we hang his paintings on a wall in a gallery. How are we to know which way up it went? Surely it should be laid on the floor and allow us to walk around it like he did. Pollock allowed himself to get lost in his paintings, which for me emphasizes why his paintings were so vast. He used a style where he would allow the paint to drip from the can, and instead of using a traditional paintbrush, he would add depth to his paintings using knives, trowels, and sticks. This form of painting is known as action painting and had similar ties to the surreal movement in that it had a direct relation to the artist's emotions, expressions, and mood, and showcase their feeling behind the piece they designed. So this little girl that loved the Olivia books and thought of the freedom of art has grown up and still has that love for art, but also now for maths and physics. And Pollock manages to bring all these subjects together in this piece, Autumn Rhythms, and showcases them in an interesting and intriguing way. Thank you.
Charlotte and Jackson Pollock. I loved Olivia visiting the museum. And then I loved the Pollockizer, this machine that I was thinking maybe there's a Coley-izer that we could make. And I think, I didn't know about the Pollockizer, although I know of Jackson Pollock's work, so I really genuinely did learn something new. And for me, the essence of your presentation was when you said, well, you asked a question, why don't we put them on the floor? Which seems so obvious. But I think the manner you said that and where you said it in your presentation really convinced me that that's a good question. Why do we put Jackson Pollocks on the walls? Surely they should be on the floor.